Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast. Mina Rizuki and myself, Nicky Bandini, have been kicking our feet back, relaxing, enjoying a week off. We're at the international break. We've been completely footloose and carefree this week, haven't we? I mean, there's not been anything happening in Italian football whatsoever.
No, absolutely nothing. There's nothing even to really check the news about, you know. Have there been major transfers? I mean, how much do those affect?
Do you know, isn't it fun, like this international break? Like it's such a strange one because it's an international break without matches in it for European clubs anyway, mostly European nations, sorry. So it's sort of been like they've taken the transfer window week, like the closing of the transfer window week, and let it really like take center stage. The transfer window doesn't have to compete with actual like football matches for most of Europe. It's just like, all right, we know you all want to talk about this anyway, because people do, right? Like we've had this conversation, I think a few times recently, because we've been doing a show on Sky Sports News where we talk about transfers. Like there's definitely like such a hunger for transfer stories, and it goes all through the year. But sometimes I think there are genuinely football fans now who are more interested in just the transfers than the actual football that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of predict how it's going to go for your team when you don't know, right? I mean, you could sign the best players, or sometimes you just want players, you just want bodies, new bodies into the old ones. Not necessarily better, but you know, I'm sure on that topic, Spurs will tell us how they feel with the bodies that they've brought in. But yeah, I think that right now everyone is so interested in what's happening in the transfer market, and who can blame them, because it was a lot more action than, let's just say, I predicted.
Yeah. Not only you, Mina. Arriva Bene, the Juventus chief executive, who announced to us, very handsome man, Arriva Bene. I feel like he looks stylish, and
yeah, I'm now in love with him. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm now in love with him.
I'm not surprised, because he announced to us before the start of this transfer window, to re-hedge it in those show business terms, Mina, he announced it as a transfer window in which there would be no coup de théâtre. He colpo de théâtre. He said it in those phrasing. He said he didn't think it was going to be an exciting or busy transfer window for Juventus. Was he fibbing just a tiny bit?
Well, you know what? I'd rather a man that promises little and over-delivers than the other way round. This is why he is now the subject of my adoration, because I really believed him. So now we know he's a liar, but that's fine. Yeah,
under promise and over deliver. That's a good, lots of places in life where that's a good idea.
I agree, absolutely. Especially when it comes to transfers, it's the best place to be. It's typical Juve back in the day when they used to be like, no, we don't know what's going on, and then just do all their transfer dealings, you know?
Let's name the names, Mina, because I feel like we're dancing around them. Dušan Vlahović, the big name of this transfer window, it felt like all across Europe, the one who everyone was talking about, certainly in England, because Arsenal were interested and Tottenham were interested, and we think Man City have been interested before now as well, but not particularly in this window. Dušan Vlahović ends up suddenly going to Juventus, who've been pretending they weren't going to act this January all along. And that's not even the end of it, because after Dušan Vlahović, we've also seen Denis Zakaria come in. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, but Zakaria coming in as well. There's talk still of yet more possible deals to be done in the next few days. But those are the big incomings. And then outgoing at the same time, Dejan Kulusevski off to Tottenham, along with Rodrigo Bentancur. And word as we're recording this is that Aaron Ramsey is also sat waiting. I saw an extraordinary claim on by a very serious journalist. I believe that the journalist on Twitter saying that he's literally sat like in an airport with a private jet waiting to take him to one of 3 different destinations. But by the time you're listening, you might know which one. So, Mina, all of that's gone down. I think like the biggest story here, though, has to be Dušan Vlahović, no?
Dušan Vlahović, yes. I think it's an interesting thing that happened, because here's the thing. I think a lot of people were worried about the way that things were going at director level for Juventus last season. There were a lot of bad deals that we obviously spoke about. Rabiot, have we really seen enough from him to command the salary that he commands? Aaron Ramsey has been in and out with injuries and never really a player that has ever been depended on. Arthur came in and in that swap deal with Pjanic, but again, injury prone, and lots of questions over the way that Juventus was being run. And we've talked about this a lot. And Nicky always used to say, when Mbappe Marotta left, it was like the adult left the table, And it was a bit like, dream big, let's go for Ronaldo, let's go for these guys that arrive for free, but give them huge salaries, which means they'll never leave and no one will match it. And there were just question marks, the way that Nedved and Paratici behaved in certain matches, the way that their reactions were, how they dealt with authority. And then obviously we had Cherubini come in, and he's the new sporting director replacing Fabio Paratici. And we've had Arriva Bene come in. And frankly speaking, I wasn't sure, because I didn't know them. I obviously had a relationship with the prior directors and knew them on a different level. And for me, I know Arriva Bene is someone who's a corporate guy who understands and doesn't have any romance in his life in the terms of the way he looks at football, something I really admire, frankly speaking, because I'm very corporate myself.
Uh-huh.
But
I'm glad you clarified. I thought you were just commenting on his romantic life for a second. But...
No, because he's just not that guy that takes football loyalty seriously. Do you know what I mean? He just knows it's a business. But Cherubini and all his relationships and the ones that he has built, he has really sort of understood, and that has been vital to getting a player like Vlahovic. I think Arriva Bene, the way that he has been very firm about payments, calling, for example, Paulo Dybala's bluff, sort of ignoring all and answering perfectly when he was been asked about that, saying, oh, well, I wasn't noticing, just completely fobs it off, doesn't try to engage in any drama. The fact that there is Kulusevski, Bentancur, money going out, we're not seeing the benefits of this. So let's see what we can do that is clinical efficiency. We want to see numbers on the pitch. We want to see players who are worth it. So let's go for Vlahovic. Now, it's interesting how many of our journalists in Italy, our counterparts, are saying that much of what's happened at Juventus over January, especially Vlahovic, is a reaction to Inter trying to go after Dybala, winning the Supercoppa, and sort of just toying with Juventus about, if there's opportunities on the market, then we'll look at those opportunities on the market. And it's Pepe Marotta saying that, right? So it's a little bit like that was the swipe at them that they needed to be like, okay, we're still Juventus. And we can't let Allegri go into a press conference and say, well, we'll keep Milan at 7 points. Like, this is still Juventus. And I feel like that's what they're saying, is that their pride has been activated. And that's why they're so heavy on the market. But frankly, I think that there's a lot there. There's fear of not getting into the top four. So Vlahovic was so important. It was about opportunities that there is Paratici at Spurs who is willing to pay the money required for Bentancur and Kulusevski so that they can bring in the likes of Denis Zakaria, who they've been following for a while anyway, and actually being followed by a lot of European clubs. And getting in Gatti. Again, Gatti is a young defender, someone that Cherubini had been following for a while, who is also being followed by several big Italian clubs. I think bringing in those players is vital because what they're trying to do is make experience with youngsters and change the way that they're building. There's no more Ronaldos and finished products. Let's try to build a genuine future. And obviously we will add finished products when we have the capability of doing so. But for the moment, let's bet on these wonderful players and see what happens. Whether or not that's enough and whether or not Allegri is still going to play the world's dullest football remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think Vlahovic, like let's name sort of the situation again. I think we covered it a bit on the last episode, but it's still worth reminding ourselves. Juventus had a game against Milan where they got literally no shots on target, something that hadn't happened to Juventus in any game for a couple of years, hadn't happened against Milan a lot longer than that. Like it's an extraordinary situation to have that game and not produce a single shot on target. So the attack was a big concern, and not just in like a one-off game either. Because if you looked at their goal scoring, they're, I think, maybe like 10th or 11th in Serie A in terms of the number of goals they've scored. And that is very much in line with their expected goals. So it's not like it's something that's anomalous. That's how they're performing. You sign a player who is someone who is holds the joint record with Cristiano Ronaldo for most goals in a calendar year. You sign someone who's just celebrated his 22nd birthday and so has an incredible, certainly scope for continuing to grow and continuing to get better. I think there's other things that I like about the Vlahovic fit specifically. And I think about the fact that actually, like, he kind of had this real step forward, this explosion under Prandelli, playing in a team that had a really low center of gravity. So a team that actually, not saying it played like Juventus, but had some sort of similar conditions to Juventus, because what Vlahovic isn't, despite his size, is a back to goal hold up striker. He's not. He's a player who wants to turn, who wants to be running forward, who wants to be heading into space. And I think that while it doesn't necessarily mean that you want this to be your ambition as a team to continue playing in this very sort of low tempo, low block way that Allegri has been playing, I think at least it's someone who I think, okay, if that is how things stay, I still think that this footballer can be productive for you. I think he can fit. I think when you see it alongside the signing of Zakaria as well, who I know sort of tends to be a defensive guy, but also really is like a high energy, like can carry the ball box to box guy. I think you start to see some idea of ways that they're trying to build something that actually has some thinking behind it, which I feel like we haven't felt from Juventus in a little while. The other thing to really sort of hammer home, I think, which I think you alluded to just now, Mina, because at the beginning of this transfer window, I think neither of us thought that this deal would happen for Juventus in this transfer window. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you thought it would. I certainly thought that if Juventus were going to do the Vlahovic deal, it would have to be next summer because I felt like the money wasn't there. Now, we now know that those sales happen, right? We know that Bentancur and Kulusevski are on the way out and that's going to generate a lot of cash. But I think even before you look at those sales, I think Juventus took stock of this month and the fact that we're getting towards the end of this month and they are still not in the top four places. They are still not playing like a team that necessarily belongs in those top four places. And I think there's a real calculation that's happened here that the Champions League is worth the last few seasons on their balance sheet. It's brought in about 85 million euros worth of prize money. So 85 million worth of prize money is what you're gambling on, and you're spending less than that to sign the player. So you sign the player, you do it now, and you give yourself that impetus. But I do think that this reads like a real statement of intent window from Juventus. And I mean, personally, I think it's probably too late to think that they're going to suddenly make a push for the title. Inter it's not just the gap in points to Inter, it's the fact that Inter are ahead of everyone in terms of how they're playing. But this is a real, no, we're putting it pushing all our chips in to make sure we get in the top 4 transfer window for me.
Yeah, and I think that they've brought in directors that are a little bit more careful with the purse strings, let's say, and they, being able to get rid of players and actually making it clear that no one can just sit on the bench. Even when it's come to Ramsey, it's been honestly to the point of threatening with, we're just going to leave you to dry. You have to find a solution because, everyone here needs to start earning everything. But there's also this mental aspect of it all. I think that, for example, Kulusevski is a player that is liked by a lot of people at Juventus on a human level. And obviously as a player, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of promise there. And they weren't yet ready to give up on him. Allegri just said, look, I can develop this player in any other year if I have all my, ducks in order and I have that experience and we are sort of coasting. But at the moment, there is just so much that I have to rebuild and re-energize and reorganize. And I don't really have time to dedicate to Kulusevski. And he doesn't, it was very clear after the game against Udinese that he doesn't trust him with his decision making. It was a very bad performance from Kulusevski and actually resulted in a lot of trolling by Juventus fans to the player, which wasn't very nice, but this is what happens on social media. And I think that they just took stock of what's going on. It's exactly that. We can't lose out on the Champions League for many reasons, even in terms of prestige. At the end of the day, when it came to a battle for Vlahovic between them and the Premier League sides, he chose Juventus. Juventus has that name and they don't want to lose it. And you would lose it when you're not in the Champions League. Maybe 1 year is fine, but eventually you may not be able to ever attract for a while, not be able to attract the level of players that they are looking to attract at the numbers that they are attracting them. So they also understood that there is room for maneuver in they have 70 million to spend in cash. The rest has to be generated through them and through their sales. And in summer, they feel like, with letting Kulusevski go, with letting Bentancur go, they are sacrifices, but they are ones that need to be made so that they can invest in potential they can actually feel like will bring them the efficiency they require. Also, what I like about the way that this is all done is that they've done so with Allegri on board. I think for a long time, the team, Sarri had a different way of playing football and the team needed to be built for Sarri, but really never was. So you found there was just such a clash in ideologies and what he wanted to do and what the players could actually do. Then you have Pirlo, who was all about, pressing from high and trying to score goals. And it's all fun and fancy free, but not necessarily rigid on a tactical level or defensively very great. Again, what do we do? But with Allegri, it's okay, if we're going to bring you on board, we promise that we will work with you. And I think that's where also Denis Zakaria, because he is very reluctant, unlike Landucci, to put Arthur and Locatelli together. And he does want somebody who can control the tempo, who is a little bit more defensive minded if he wants to unleash the others. Because frankly speaking, when you have Locatelli and you're wasting him in the way that you are, it's really horrible to watch because he's capable of so much more. And at least now with McKennie, who he has said, I really would like to keep, that wasn't his feeling in the beginning of the season. Remember that McKennie was not the player that he necessarily wanted to keep. But throughout the season, he has seen a lot in him and he's chosen him rather than Bentancur. And he feels that he can now work with this midfield to perhaps arrange something for everyone to take part in. And actually, hold possession in midfield that will bring more goals, that will hopefully keep Dybala further up front, rather than back there next to Bonucci trying to take the ball and progress it up.
Yeah.
It's so annoying to watch Dybala do that. And so it's about how to get the best out of Dybala and Vlahovic. But also, I think Morata, that, there's been a lot of talk of Morata being played in a Mandzukic role, on the wing. Morata doesn't like to be your, number 9. He wants to work with a reference point. He was top assist maker for Ronaldo last season. He likes to work off somebody. He wants to be the man in between the main striker and midfield. He actually loves it, which is why he doesn't like playing with Dybala type of characters, because they lean on him to be the reference point, and he doesn't want to do that, which is what happened in Atletico with João Felix as well. So this works out for me in all of those areas, and you can sort of start seeing that. But again, all falls to what Allegri will choose to do and how long he takes to do that. Because you know what he's like. He needs to find his solidity, and he's not very quick in just experimenting. So how long is this all going to take? Is it, I mean, it's thankful that it's Villarreal that they're taking on and not Liverpool, but Villarreal are also a very annoying team to play. Atalanta can attest to that. But this team needs to start working quickly because there's not that many games left. There obviously are, but Napoli is in great form. They're going to get Anguissa back shortly. They've got Osimhen back and they're flying. Milan, they're not involved in European competition, obviously, and Atalanta aren't, they have the Europa League, but they're a team that always scare you. So can Juventus make top four, even if they go on a good run?
Yeah, well, I think they can if they go on a good enough run. But I agree with you that it's the great question now is Max Allegri normally works his teams out in mid-season, but normally he's got the pieces from the start of the season to start playing with, and now he's going to get these new pieces and go, right, make it work fast. There's so many things in my head with this transfer. Some things I think are really exciting. I keep sort of thinking about when Chiesa is back, which is going to be a while now, but when you have Chiesa back and you have Vlahovic on the pitch with him, it's such a muscular front line. Like they're both such physical runners, the way they run at you. But you know what I mean, Mina? Like they're not like, these are not shrinking violets. They're both players who like physically impose themselves a bit, I think, with the way they run and the way that they sort of are on the pitch. Obviously, Vlahovic is a bigger player, but even Chiesa, I think he really does have that sort of power is an important part of his game. And I think that is an important part of Ronaldo's game. And I think there's something in the sort of aggression of that this Juventus team has been crying out for at times, because at times they've just seemed so horribly passive. I think that's the thing which drives people mad with Allegri's Juventus teams at their worst, is that they can seem like they're just there playing out time. Like they're not taking sort of control of a situation. And I think these are players who, by their nature, seek to do that.
Do you think they can work well together?
We'll find out. Obviously, in style, I don't see them stepping on each other's toes. You've got one player who likes coming off the wing, one player who is a true centre forward. But look, on the other hand, you could say, well, Vlahovic is the left footer. Is he going to drift into those same spaces that Chiesa wants to exist in? We'll find out. Not for a while, we won't, but eventually we'll find out. I
mean, Chiesa anymore, it doesn't work. So, I mean, I feel like with Chiesa, he needs possession-based players around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Vlahovic is very different, yeah. And he is extraordinary. But my worry is that they need the same type of players around them. And who is going to be the possession-based player that delivers? Is Dybala staying? Is he going to be at the back somewhere, like trying to get the ball up? Is midfield working? And I feel like when I think of Chiesa, I think of Berardi and senior players who hold the ball so that he can charge forward and do all the things that he does magnificently. I don't necessarily... he is head down.
Yeah, he is
so exciting. But I'm worried whether or not there is going to be this overall scheme of play that is elevated, between the final third. Are they going to get it together? Is there going to be a fluid movement and understanding? And is Chiesa going to look up and see where Vlahovic is and deliver, or vice versa? So, and you want them both to shine, but they can't both be head down. So I'm interested to see what will happen and who is going to be the reference point, and in that sense.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, because I think we very probably have like one Juventus for the next 6 months, right? And then we have a different Juventus next season completely, because the next 6 months, especially with Kulusevski gone now, up front, you have to rely on Vlahovic, yes, but then you have to rely on Dybala and Morata as his supporting acts, right? Because you haven't got Chiesa and you haven't got Kulusevski. So these are the pieces that you've got to make work together. And I think that's an interesting dynamic. We don't know what this... well, I have a good hunch what this means for the future of Morata, which I don't think Morata will be at Juventus next season. I think he'll be here until next season, but I don't think he's going to get extended now. And Dybala, what does his role become in this? I think I can see a world in which Dybala and Vlahovic work quite well together, because Dybala, as we've talked about, his problem or his asset, depending on how you view it, is that he wants to come back the whole time. Vlahovic isn't interested in that. He wants to get up and take the space at the top of the pitch. All super interesting. I'm interested to see how Zakaria is used, because again, he is sort of perceived as a defensive player, and he does that very effectively. Did it at Mönchengladbach, but I also think he can run box to box. But my suspicion is
We don't need that.
You actually probably want him to come and hold that middle ground. And then actually maybe that frees up Locatelli to run more box to box than he's been doing so far, because that's what he can do as a mezzala. So all of these pieces and how they fit together is super, super interesting. I still want to sort of, and I think probably a lot of our English language listeners, because English language voice podcast, are going to be fascinated as well by the implications of the outgoing pieces going to Tottenham, Mina. I think it's been such a sort of fascinating ride for both Bentancur and Kulusevski. Bentancur first, just because I suppose I was just talking about Zakaria. Funnily enough, I would say the things that I've liked about Bentancur is best are not dissimilar to what I've liked about, or I see in Zakaria. You know, he can be a good, strong holding player who wins tackles and who is very responsible with sort of passing, because both of them have at times at least had very high passing percentages, but most of it is being very cautious with the ball. Now, lately, I think Bentancur has not been responsible with the ball. I think this season he's given it away really quite often in bad ways. And that's been a big frustration for Juventus fans. And he's someone who I can see going somewhere else and reviving himself. And he's also someone who I'm worried about. And I think that Juventus have probably taken the sensible view that it's not working out here. And if we can get a good price for him, that's fine. Kulusevski, in some ways, the same story. I would say in terms of ceiling, someone who I view with a much higher ceiling. When Kulusevski arrived at Juventus, he was Serie A's young player that season. I thought he had a brilliant future ahead of him when he arrived from Parma. I actually thought he was more exciting to me than Chiesa at that time. And it hasn't worked out for him at all, partly because he occupies the same space as Chiesa, which made it a very odd decision to do them both in the same transfer window. I think that was slightly, Chiesa forced the issue, actually said, I don't want to hang around at Fiorentina anymore. You sign me now or you don't. I individually can see both these players doing better somewhere else. I hope for them as footballers that they find better situations at Tottenham. I find it an interesting, potentially combustible situation always when Antonio Conte signs players. You think there's been plenty before where he's decided Milos Krasic or someone where they come in and it's like, oh, here's an interesting creative player. Decides didn't like them and that's it. They're done. You never see them again. But it's impossible to look at this, Mina, and not raise
Krasic.
And not raise an eyebrow a little bit, because Fabio Paratici was at Juventus. And my feeling on these two transfers is they could work out, they could not. But for sure, this is a price higher than Juventus would have been willing to settle for. I feel like Juventus would have sold these two players for at least 10 million less combined, like a month ago. And they still are able to turn it into like nice profit on the balance sheet. It's great business for Juventus, I guess, is the first thing to say.
So what you're trying to say is that Fabio Paratici is still a Juventus
I'm
agent.
not saying that.
And
but
it's certainly the rumor.
But look,
that he's still there helping them, you know?
I mean, it's so funny because we talked about this, like Italian football is so full of conspiracy theories. It loves a conspiracy theory. And you know, I still know Italians who have said to me with the sort of tone that you can't quite tell if they're joking or not, that they don't think that Liverpool ever sold Ian Rush to Juventus. They actually sent another player. And that's why John Aldridge showed up at Liverpool right afterwards, both with their moustaches and look similar. Now, in fact, John Aldridge and Ian Rush did later play together at Liverpool, so that the theory has some holes. But this sort of theory does tend to get perpetuated in Italy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and of course that Marcello Lippi was an agent of Juventus when he went and tried to destroy Inter as their coach, apparently, and then went back to Juve and won everything. It is interesting because I did see the figures and I was a little bit shocked. Obviously, we know that Kulusevski is sort of looked at as 35 million, right? But you know that and the loan, they're getting more from Spurs for him. And especially it's interesting because, you know, Daniel Levy's supposed to be so tight with his money, and yet you're thinking 19 million for Bentancur plus 6 million in add-ons in terms of bonuses, some of them really easy to reach. Again, interesting. But with that, here's the thing. I don't know whether Paratici is just bad with money and sort of thinks, yeah, no, that's just how much it is. Because there's a part of me that also think he overpaid for Romero. not because how much I love and I worship this defender, but it's not like there was that much competition and people trying to get Romero at the time, So I don't know whether he's just bad with money, because that's why he was flinging these ridiculous figures when he was at Juventus as well. And Beppe Marotta used to sort of rein him in a bit. And when he went, he was a little bit too free and easy with the cash. Or whether not Cherubini, Arriva Bene is just very much like, yeah, this is just the way it is, And he's really tight with money, obviously very corporate, very like, what am I getting? And just negotiated really tough. And here's the thing, Spurs had to make signings because Conte is going to lose his mind any second now. And the fans are going to lose their mind any second now. So it's a question of, it's almost like an image thing. They've lost, obviously, their number one target to Liverpool. And they just keep losing all their targets. So for them, it was like, we have to bring in bodies to satisfy the image that we are the team that is trying to win something this season. And then there's this part of me that thinks of Harry Kane, Song and Kulusevski in that forward line. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be a very interesting forward line. Like, I'm interested to see how that goes. And Bentancur, I don't know what happened with Bentancur. I think it's he's young. It was many different coaches. Each of them wanted something different from him. And I just feel there's a part of him that's a little bit like done, that when he wants to do well, which I feel like was against Milan, because he knew there were scouts. He knew that Aston Villa had come to watch him. He was fantastic in that match. So I know that Bentancur has it. He's not a player that I rely on heavily in terms of, I think he needs a veteran alongside him. I think he plays better when he had an older figure, whether it was, Matuidi and Pjanic. I think he works better with communication. He obviously is technically good. He's good on the ball. He's good off the ball. But I just feel like he's just done. He wanted to move and he made it clear to Juventus that he's happy to go to Spurs. So that tells you a lot as well. Whereas there are others who are like clinging on to Juventus for dear life. He made it clear alongside Arthur that we're both happy to go. So that tells you something. He wants a new adventure. And I think that he has enough to show whether or not he can. I believe in Conte and players like Bentancur. I believe less in Conte and players like Eriksen, but he managed with that obviously in the end and turned him, and they had a beautiful relationship towards the end. But I like these types of players because I feel like Bentancur will listen to his instructions and will give him what he needs. It's just obviously, it's whether or not he can make an impact straight away. Yeah. Kulusevski, I don't know. Because I feel like I don't want too much tactical rigidity. And I feel like De Versa just let him go. Just sort of said to him, like, you're the kid, and just have fun. Just go direct, vertical football, unleash those long limbs of yours and show me what you can do. And everything was based around his instinct. So he wasn't having to think too much and who shall I deliver the ball to and where shall I move and which player am I supposed to be like closing down. And he has done a lot of that with Allegri and he's trying so hard. And I could see like there is so much potential in this player. I am so upset to let him go, honestly. But I feel like, it's not going to work out with him. I do think it's interesting that his words when he left was, I hope to come back to Juventus, I think that tells you a lot about how he feels. I just don't think Allegri is necessarily the right coach for him. I do think that he needs to be let off the leash. And I'm not entirely sure Antonio Conte will give him that. So I'm interested to see that. But I feel like the Premier League is a good league for him. I think he will really shine. And he needs to shine because, this is a player who needs to make a difference for Sweden as well. And there's a lot of talent there and he needs to be showing that on a consistent basis as opposed to only coming on for a few minutes or playing a half here and there and being yelled at for not making exactly the right decision that he's making. So it's a deal that works for both of them. But I think the one that we're most excited about as Juventus fans is hopefully Aaron Ramsey leaving because that's just been this constant saga and a drain on the wages. I mean, he's so expensive. He never plays, and it's just something that everyone keeps asking. It's just an annoying thing that hangs over them. So obviously, we don't know where he's going, and that's the latest rumors as we were recording. But it looks like to me that Rangers seem to be sort of the place that he will go. And Juventus have agreed that if it is Rangers, to pay some of the some of his wages, basically. So I feel like for Ramsey, I just don't know why you don't want to play and you're pushing to like play anywhere. At the end of the day, Christian Eriksen went through a lot And, he wants to play at Brentford. They want him to play. He wants to show what he can do. I think Ramsey can't just keep, no, I don't like this club. I don't like this club. Come on, show us. You're a great player. You shouldn't ever be outside of the squad. So show us what you can do.
Just to remind our listeners, when Mina says we about Juventus fans, she's using the royal we, or she's using a we referring to her and other Juventus fans. One Juventus fan on this podcast.
Yes.
I just want to have one last thought on Kulusevski, which is that the Paratici working for Juventus thing is a joke. Like, there's conspiracy theories that happen in Italy. I'm at least not being very serious with that. But I think it is worth reminding ourselves, actually, that it was Paratici who signed Kulusevski for Juventus, and in fact, at the time was so outspoken in his enthusiasm for that player specifically. They signed him in January, but left him on loan at Parma until the end of the season. And Paratici said at the time, if it was up to me, he'd be here right now. That was how eager he was to have him.
Yeah,
so that is a genuine enthusiasm.
And he loved Bentancur.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were talking about Tevez, like, he kept saying, like, this kid's going to be something. Like, I really want him to be part of the deal.
Mm.
And so Marotta, like, when, the time when that was being negotiated, he really did like Ben. So he has gone for players that he likes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do see that as well.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other side of this transfer, of course, which is Fiorentina, who are also having an interesting transfer window at this point. So back in just a second. Serie A Chronicles is excited to partner with Kalido Media, an Australian digital media agency specializing in website design and development and digital marketing.
The Kalido Media team has a diverse range of digital skills, including helping our podcast by managing its social media accounts and editing videos for YouTube.
Whether you're looking to enhance your website to attract new business or find an audience via social media marketing to generate leads and sales, Kalido Media will work with you to develop a customized digital strategy for your business.
They've had a lot of success in generating leads and driving online traffic for various types of businesses.
So if you're looking to attract new eyeballs to your business to generate leads and drive sales, visit kalidomedia.com.au to get in touch with the team to discuss a strategy to fire up your business, connect with your ideal audience, and communicate your message.
Fire up, connect, and communicate with Kalido Media. See the link in the show notes.
Before we get on to talking about Fiorentina, I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our new Chronicles tifosi this week who've joined up for the Patreon. Thank you so much for signing up for that. We really appreciate it. It makes such a difference to us as we continue our growth as a little podcast that we have here. For those who haven't heard already, we've got a new Patreon. We are going to be putting some bonus content on there. We've already had a couple of extra minisodes on there. We're still working on different things that we might want to put on there. So do let us know, by the way, what things you would like as your bonus Patreon content.
Yeah, let us know.
That's really important as well. But shout out to our new Patreons this week. We've got Ryan Mulia. We've got Lachlan, aka Principina. So a secret.
Juve fan.
Wow, could just really like the book, Little Prince, which is a wonderful book.
That is true.
We've got Neil Langley. We've got Eric, just Eric. We've got another one name, just Eric, keeping it simple.
Whoa, Eric and Jill.
Oh my
and
God,
Jared.
what a team they've got. And Daniel Bartolini.
We've got Simon Smith, Luke Brownfield, Sanat Talmaki, and Alexander Davis. So join at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles, or go to our website at serieachronicles.com and click the link if you do want to be a Patreon Chronicles tifosi. We really do appreciate all your support. And again, I just want to reiterate, tell us what you would like. Like, what are the things you want, hot takes, immediate action, a different episode on something else? Love to hear your thoughts on this, because we are trying to design a podcast that everyone wants to listen to and is excited to listen to. So let us know your ideas. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. That's really important. We really are so grateful for it.
Sono passati in un secondo, giocando sotto questa luna piena, per Antonioni con il 10 sulla schiena, e 90 anni di cuore di pallone, tutta Firenze per un'unica passione. E abbiamo visto Rossi segnare una tripletta e ribaltare una partita maledetta, e quindi forza Fiorentina, Viola.
Right. Juventus have signed Vlahovic. That means Fiorentina have sold Vlahovic, Mina. I want to talk about the player they've signed to replace him, Arthur Cabral. I think that's a really interesting signing. But let's just start off with the sort of big picture here of Juventus and Fiorentina, two big rivals. Certainly, I would say traditionally that is a rivalry that's been felt more on the Florentine side, more for the people of Firenze than for the people of Torino. Well, the Juventus fans, people of Torino are a diverse bunch, don't all support one club. But I think it's really a bitter pill to swallow if you're a Fiorentina fan that yet again they've had to sell one of their sort of leading lights, the sort of the latest great hope to the team they hate the most. It happened with Federico Chiesa, it happened back in the day with Roberto Baggio, it happened with perhaps not the same level of pain, but nevertheless Federico Bernardeschi, who was a player who people were enthusiastic about and seemed to have a bright future, and gets sold to your greatest rival. So the way this went down with Vlahovic, who was obviously a great talent, who decided not to sign that new contract, and then did the thing that they feared the most, going to sign for Juventus when it could have been signing for a club abroad and at least sort of being out of sight, out of mind. Undoubtedly, very, very painful, and salt rubbed in the wound this week by some quite provocative banners hung by Juventus ultras in Florence as well. Do you want to just speak, Mina, to like how you see Rocco Commisso's position in all of this as the Fiorentina owner? Like he's been dealt a pretty tough hand in this situation, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who say, Fiorentina ultras were saying that he promised a child that he wouldn't sell any of those great talents to Juventus anymore, and that there is still trauma for them that they've never really gotten over, and that they want an owner who understands the rivalry, who understands them on a romantic level, and here's the thing that annoys me about everything. And the fact of the matter is that this was even discussed in politics. I mean, we had the former prime minister having an opinion on Vlahovic's transfer to Juventus, which I think is his opinion I find beyond ridiculous, because I think that what is with all this sort of anger being aimed at mainly at Vlahovic for choosing Juventus, fine, you can be angry with your player for not showing you the loyalty that you thought you merited. I understand that. That makes sense to me. But it makes no sense to me that you're angry with Rocco Commisso, because what you're trying to say to me is that the player gave him no other option. The player said to him, I will go to Juventus or I will run down my contract. The available offers are not ones that I would like to go to. People talk about Atletico Madrid. Again, that was at a time where there was still a relationship with Vlahovic, and there was a genuine desire and perhaps optimism that he would renew his contract. Whether or not Vlahovic felt the same amount of optimism remains to be seen, and obviously he didn't, because come January, he had by then made it very clear that he wasn't staying at Fiorentina, or at least his agents did with their non-communication. But when your options are, and the fact is that football changes very, very quickly. I mean, this is something Ronaldo says over and over again. It really does. So when Atletico come in over the summer or and offer a certain amount of money, to him saying, well, maybe I'm open to a renewal, to what happens in January, so much has changed. And at the end of the day, there was no longer any sort of communication with Vlahovic's agents. There was no hope for a renewal. Too much had been said in the press from Fiorentina and obviously their directors, including Rocco Commisso, about how much money was offered and how disappointed he was that Vlahovic didn't want to renew, considering the figures mentioned, which were the highest figures Fiorentina had offered a player. And there was a part of him that seemed genuinely disturbed by the fact that Vlahovic wouldn't accept 4 million, because that was just so high for Fiorentina. Almost not understanding that the player had his own ambitions. The thing is with Commisso is he is new to Italian football. he came in to Fiorentina and thought genuinely that he would manage to overcome all the bureaucracy and build a stadium quickly. And every day he gets dealt a blow because he can't understand as an American how hard it is to be a president of a football club. So, here we are in January. There are offers from Newcastle. There are interest from Newcastle, genuine offers from Spurs, genuine offers from Arsenal. The player only wants Juventus. The player's agent only wants Juventus. So your option is I let him wind down his contract, or I take the 75 million and use that to reinforce my club and make sure we push for Europe and eventually become the team that doesn't need to sell talent to anyone because players want to stay with who we are. He's thinking of his future. He's a corporate man. He's a man who understands business and football. And this is the situation. So in any sense, for me, it's just crazy to think anyone would be upset with him. Yes, I understand the aesthetic. It's not nice to lose a player. Obviously, they've lost Baggio. They lost Chiesa. What is going on? They're all choosing Juventus. But it's like every player in the Bundesliga chooses to go to Bayern, So it's difficult because you're asking these players to not have these ambitions. Well, why don't you try to sell them abroad? The player doesn't want to go. So what do you want me to do? At the end of the day, the player wants to stay in Italy. And instead of just staying with my club, he wants to go to the best club in Italy, or a club that is going to be trying to play European competition, trying to win those trophies, to be alongside the likes of Giorgio Chiellini or whoever it is and coached by Max Allegri. At the end of the day, unfortunately, for a lot of these owners, the players will make the difference. And if the player chooses Juventus, you have no option but to take the money and make a wise decision in a corporate sense, because you have a fiduciary duty to your club and to everyone who works within that club. You can't turn down money because it's Juventus. So this is the romance part in football that for me has never made sense. I mean, romance in general makes no sense for me. I despise it. I think it's disgusting, frankly speaking, most of the time. I'm just one of those people. I just really hate romantic people. It really irks me. And I'm like, get a life, Like, I don't know. People on Valentine's Day who are like, oh my God, he bought me flowers and this big heart. And it just like, what I got on Valentine's Day? I got chicken wings because I love chicken wings. Yeah. And I just thought that was romantic.
But that can be romantic. You're confusing. No, Mina, you're confusing like sanitized romance that we're told to like by Hollywood with like actual romance. Actual romance is getting the chicken wings if that's what you want, brought to you by the person you want to bring them to you.
But then Commisso is doing actual romance. He's taking the money to invest in Fiorentina to make it a bigger club, to push for Europe and to no longer ever have these things. But they don't look at that. They think, oh my God, how could you have sold to Juve? Honey, they're not. As in, there has to be a dose of reality here. This is what I wonder about this world, Like, I know I'm taking this off tangent, but people who sit there and listen to positive affirmations, I'm looking for negative affirmations because I feel like this is detrimental. Yeah. When you hear every day, I am worthy of why are you worthy? As in, I get it. Everyone should have a positive, note. But I think people have become demanding now of such a high level, and there's no more tolerance for normality and reality. We're Fiorentina ultras and we deserve the best. No, you really don't. If you don't want to sell to Juve, pay him the 70 million. He's not going to go out of pocket to satisfy your romantic needs of not selling to Juventus. We live in the real world. Do you know what I mean? And there's money and bills and people's lives and salaries to pay. You can't say, we don't want to sell to Juve because they're not your rivals. They're just not. Your rivals are Sassuolo. Your rivals are Sampdoria. I don't know who, Lazio maybe, but they are just not Juventus. Juventus and Inter are operating at a different level. Maybe one day they will be, but it is weird to still have these romantic ideals where you're still clinging on to this. You can't sell to this team and you have to do this team. Pay the man 75 million and make sure Vlahovic stays or goes to another club. But until you can cough up the cash and it hurts your pocket, don't talk to me about romance. And Rocco Commisso, he is an annoying little man who talks too much, but he is doing what's right by his club and he is doing fiduciary duties. And that is exactly what I expect from my president at the end of the day. I want my future to be secure. And if it means that I have to sell to the devil, I will sell whatever he wants. That's my piece.
Mina is on fire this week. I just want to clarify.
Valentine's Day, and we're just going to get all this rubbish, disgustingness of
Oh God, it is. I didn't even realize how close it was to Valentine's Day, Mina. I didn't even realize that. That's why it's in your head. I just want to clarify that the official position of the Serie A Chronicles podcast is not against positive affirmations. I'm going to give a shout out for being positive in life and thinking the best. Mina and I, we're yin and yang, but we get on brilliantly, and that works.
As long as you have a dose of reality in these positive affirmations, I'm fine. But I have a right to be happy. Not really. Do you know what I mean? You have a right to work hard to be happy, sure, but that's it, Sorry.
Listen, the important thing is that I now get to extend this analogy. I get to extend this analogy that you've built for us, Mina, by saying that what you're saying, what you're telling the listener is, the Fiorentina supporting listener is not to focus on the fancy floral arrangement that just got given too cheaply, well, not too cheaply, quite expensive, actually, it just got given dramatically to Juventus. But the bucket of chicken wings that is Arthur Cabral, who, by the way, I think I called Antonio Cabral earlier because I was having a brain melt moment thinking about Antonio Conte, but Arthur Cabral is your footballing bucket of chicken wings who's been brought in from Basel, where he's absolutely been prolific for the last 3 seasons. I think he's already on 27 goals this season, which when you think it's only January is a little bit bonkers. Scored 20 last season, and I think 18 the season before, which was the season that he arrived.
Excellent scouting. Excellent.
I think he's a really fascinating signing. First thing to say, compared to Vlahovic, a bargain, right? You've sold for 75 million, you've brought in someone for 16 million because that's bonuses all included, because chicken wings aren't that expensive, right? You don't have to overspend chicken wings. The good ones that taste good, that make you feel happy and a little bit greasy. Yeah. Those ones, not too expensive. Yes. He's a really interesting player, actually, because if you look back at his sort of origin story in Brazil when he's first coming through as a young player, he's coming through at the same time as Gabigol and scoring a similar number of goals. But he didn't get a lot of sort of nationally, like a lot of credence. Felipe Scolari basically wasn't interested in him for the national team, was saying he's too slow. And that's why he didn't, as tends to happen with prolific young interesting Brazilian forwards, didn't get snapped up for loads of money by someone big in Europe. He ended up going to Basel, and for not much at all at the time, I think it was just a few million, and getting to sort of build his sort of career in a different way, going through playing in the Swiss leagues, where again he's been absolutely prolific. And I think he's a very different forward to Vlahovic. When you look at them stylistically, Vlahovic, as I said before, is all physicality and power and pace and explosiveness and going to absolutely make your defenders feel like, oh my God, I'm being imposed on. Cabral, he's not small, actually. He's probably a couple of centimeters shorter than Vlahovic, but he's not small, but he's also not someone who dominates you in that way. In fact, he remains, as Scolari described him, not the fastest. Like you look at other centre forwards who play in the way that he does, trying to play on the shoulder of defenders, and you expect a bit more explosiveness than that. But he has these incredible, quick feet almost, his ability to navigate tight spaces. And look, it's always hard to know when someone is coming from, with the greatest respect in the world, for Swiss Super League, a league that is a step down, whether or not those specific talents are going to carry across as well in a league that historically has been known for great defending. I'm not certain that really applies to Serie A anymore, but certainly has been. But he's certainly different stylistically. He's probably a more technical player than Vlahovic, someone who really relies heavily on his ability to have great body control, to have great close control, because he's not going to, again, dominate you physically. But he's just scored so many goals that I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated to see how it works out.
Also because they do have Piontek. So they have somebody who,
is Piontek, yeah.
Yes. So the aerial, the physical, you can get from Piontek, but the tight spaces, the quick feet, speed of execution. So he thinks quickly and acts quickly, which I really like about him. He's very quick to make his decision, which is something I wish Kulusevski was very good at. But that kind of thing makes it, for me, very interesting, especially because he's got Vincenzo Italiano, who does play a very attacking brand of football and really gets the best out of his attacking players. So on that level, and you put Icone, obviously, in the winger that they have bought in, they've really acted very well in this transfer market to fill the gaps in their attacking lineup. And on obviously the sale of Vlahovic. So that's, kudos to you for building this wonderful team, to try to make up for this loss. And I do think that he is a player that if you are going to make that step, considering the fact that maybe pace is not his number one quality, but it is the tight spaces. You're coming up against tight defenses. Sometimes Sampdoria used to play with 3 and 5, or a lot of them will have like 8 or 7 men lined up at the back. You will need a player like that. And it answers and goes into a different, fills a different league, let's say. And I think for him that if he is making the transition to another league, one of the top 5 leagues, then Serie A is probably a great one for him because of the tight defending that he will come across and that he might be able to overcome, because he's not the fastest player, but he does have speed of execution. And there is just this ability to show off what he can do. So it's a stepping stone for him, if you will, to try to get into the national team or try to show us all that he is worthy of the attention. Because like you said, he's prolific, and Basel has a great scouting system. So if they've chosen him, it's not because he's cheap. It's because they know that he can do something special, and he has done something special. His record is incredible. So I am really interested to see, because there's a higher level of sort of tactical requirements going to be asked of him when he's at Fiorentina. But I am in love with Italiano, and if there's anyone I trust to get the best out of you, hopefully it's him. So I'm interested to see how that is. I also love the way he speaks. He seems very level-headed and fun, and King Arthur. Let's see what King Arthur will do for us. Well, and us, I don't mean Fiorentina fans.
It's certainly like one of those little transfers you're like, oh, I'm genuinely excited to watch this in the second half of the season and see how it pans out. Now, the other biggest deals so far in this window, I think the obvious standout one for me, Mina, is Robin Gosens signing for Inter. Inter have also lined up Felipe Caicedo. Both interesting, but for sure for me, Gosens is the headliner of those two. To me, this is unlike Vlahovic and unlike Cabral. This is all about next season, because actually right now Gosens is injured. We think he'll come back somewhere between the 2 legs of their Champions League tie against Liverpool, so he's still a few weeks away. And right now you've got Ivan Perisic playing as your left wing back and doing pretty well. That's a role that he took on under Antonio Conte, and he continues to execute fairly well. Now, anyone who's listened to this podcast for a while will know that I adore Robin Gosens. I think he's one of the really underappreciated and standout wing-back talents in the world, frankly. I think I really rate him that highly. I am worried about this injury and whether or not he's going to come back from it at the level he's been before. But in my mind, it's just sensible forward planning, right? Because you've signed him now. And in fact, the deal that Inter have signed for him, in fact, because it's a loan deal with a permanent trigger, like an obligation to buy, that triggers with his first actions of next season. So actually, if the injury turns out to be much worse than they feared, I suppose there might still be a way from them to extricate themselves from the deal. But to me, this is all about forward planning for that post-Perisic. Perisic's contract is out in the summer. And for me, even though Perisic has been very, very good, this is not a knock on Perisic. It's an upgrade as well, just because I think Robin Gosens, again, is one of the best in the world at his position.
But they're different. Like,
yeah.
I mean, from my understanding is that they're still going to look for a Perisic backup as well. Like, as in, if they don't manage to discuss a new deal. So I wonder do you think that's it? Or they'll be looking for other players as well to play on the left wing?
I expect Perisic will leave. I think now that Gosens has come in, I think Perisic's contract will be too expensive to have both. And I would not be shocked if it ends up being Gosens and Di Marco as the options at left wing back next season, but I could be wrong. Of course, we're still in the middle of the season, not the summer, and many things can change between now and the summer transfer window.
I mean, I think for the dressing room, I think he's a great addition to have to that. I think he's great off the ball. On the ball rather. and off the ball. He's a very direct player. I'll be honest with you, Gosens was quite closely attached to Juve at one point when they were like thinking about, especially when Pirlo was in charge. Gosens was the player that they really wanted to buy. But there's something about him that I've never been 1,000% obsessed with, and I can't figure it out. But Simone Inzaghi is somebody that fills me with so much trust in terms of getting the best out of these players, especially direct players. I definitely trust under Inzaghi. So I'm desperate to see how that works out. And I'm really desperate to see how they manage it against Liverpool, because I think there's something that's interesting that you're saying he's going to come back between those two legs. But the player who's going to be missing is Barella. And, with the Champions League coming up, and now it's official that his red card means that he has to skip both legs. I mean, there was a part of me that read that and I just felt like a pain, because I really did think that Inter could challenge. I'm not saying necessarily that they can win this match. I understand Liverpool are one of the best teams in Europe right now, and they're a tough ask, for Inter. But without Barella, for me, that's just really changed things. And I'm so upset. So I think for Inter, when they are buying, and obviously there is talk of Dybala, and they've just brought in Caicedo, another forward who has scored so many last minute goals for Inzaghi. He's been such a great player to bring off the bench, is someone that never complains about sitting on the bench, always wants to make the difference, makes the most out of the minutes that he has on the pitch, has a great relationship with Inzaghi. So it's a great purchase. I don't want them to focus so much. I mean, I know they've let Sensi go to Sampdoria, which makes sense to me because obviously he hasn't been available. And I do think that for him, he needs to get his career back on track. He needs minutes. And I do think Gianpaolo, as much as I think he's the worst coach on the planet, could do something with him because he's the kind of player that he likes. So that could actually be a relationship that works out. And I'd really love it if Sensi does. But I think the midfield is somewhere that they need to look on, because they brought in Çalhanoğlu and Brozovic and they make such a difference. Brozovic is getting on. His contract renewal will be made public soon. But there needs to be, I think, one more guy in there, to replace a Sensi. And I think that's where they need to focus all their energies in summer. Because without Barella going into Liverpool, who would you play?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's the thing is, Mina, you sort of, I think sort of touched towards this. We both feel like Inter at their best can play some really good football. And even sort of taking a step back from that, though, you acknowledge that Liverpool are right at the sort of forefront right now as one of the very, very best teams in all of Europe. And so to have a chance against Liverpool, I think Inter can have a chance against Liverpool, but you need Inter to be at their best. And it's hard to see them at their best without Barella. And I don't even know what the midfield decisions will be, but you've taken out an Italy international and someone who is very much a core player in this team under Inzaghi and as was under Conte. And I can't see them hitting their top levels in that game. We'll have time to talk about those games though coming up. Let's just wrap up our final transfer market stuff. I've just seen a note dropped in to our shared document from our producer, Simon, who says that there are reports of Frank Ribery rescinding his contract with Salernitana and announcing his retirement. Unfortunately, I have to say, he hasn't had such a huge impact at Salernitana on the pitch this season, so that wouldn't be a hugely dramatic one, but obviously for the football team, but would be obviously the end of a magnificent career. Sassuolo have been trying to take steps to prepare themselves for the departure of Scamacca, who might be off to Inter. Certainly, pieces sort of falling into place there for a summer deal rather than a January transfer deal. Is there anything else you wanted to pick up on in the transfer section, Mina?
No, I'm just jealous of whoever gets Bremer from Torino, but that's it. And it might be Inter.
Yeah, it could be.
But I think that's all we have time for today. We said this was going to be a short one.
It never is. We're literally not capable of it. We're not capable of it.
And you know what? There's still so much we have probably.
There's still more we could have talked about. Yeah.
We're trying really hard to keep a lid on it. But this is the power of Nicky, Bandini and I when we get together. and I'm really sorry about the tangents, but we'll try to stop them before Valentine's Day. It's just having to go and buy out all these stupid hearts because Your other half actually believes in this stuff. Anyway.
I think we're seeing a glimpse here. We're seeing a glimpse here.
Yeah, it's like, how can you care about this stuff, honestly? Anyway, we'll be back on Friday with Chronicles Q&A mailbag show. Please check out our new website at serieachronicles.com. We worked out on putting that up, and click the link to join our Patreon and become a Chronicles tifosi. Get access to exclusive podcasts and bonus content. And again, we ask you, please do tell us the kind of things you would like to listen to so we can work hard to produce the podcast that you want to listen to. Get your questions in on Twitter at SerieAChronPod with the hashtag ChroniclesQ&A, or email us or send a voice message via our website. We're going to give priority to our Chronicles Tifosi members for Q&A questions. Find us on Twitter at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki. Only say nice stuff to us, please. Although actually I might have some positive affirmations going on in the background. Subscribe to the Serie A Chronicles YouTube channel for clips of the show. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. That's all we have time for. Thank you for listening, and ciao for now.
Social Podcast Network.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.